think about it. Like, we didn't have to have this mic. We didn't have to buy extra dice. I didn't have to buy that thing. Like, I could have literally spent $10 on dice, $15 on the book, and I'm good to play.
Yeah, but even that stuff isn't that expensive when you think about it. I mean, the $60 on the mic, if you go on Amazon and get the book, just get the Player's Handbook on Amazon, it's $30 after shipping. And then, let's say 2 sets of dice. I mean, you're at $20, $60, $80. You're at $80. You're at $90, and you can buy that over the course of several months. But then, like, if you want to do figurines, figurines aren't cheap. Like, I want to buy figurines for us to play with.
Yeah.
The group, and I can't afford a $30 dragon figurine. I can't afford $25 for 4 orc warriors.
Yeah.
Like, that's where it gets expensive. Like, it can be expensive really quickly.
But there's something about me, though, that, I get the benefit of it because especially, if you're trying to Skype in, which I'm still kind of curious how this is going to work on just, on a screen, trying to show them things and, make sure they understand it. Where in the thing, you can always ask. Because, we've, pretty much most of us have bought miniatures now. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, you're saying, 4 orcs. Well, part of it is also... I don't mind not having the little choice because if you tell me there's 4 orcs, boom, I see 4 orcs in my head. And if you tell me one of them's really big with this big scar on his eye and this leather sash that he's got daggers in, I get it already. That's who I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I feel. What? Oh, okay.
But no. But I understand what you're saying. It's all in the imagination. That's important. But, it is nice to have the frame of reference. That text I sent out the other day to where I said, I'm sorry I'll never be this good of a DM. That is amazing.
This. But also, dude must have won the lottery or something. Because, the text you sent us essentially showed this guy who had built, the equivalent of, one of those guys who build the, train setups or whatever they're called. They fill their basement with a train that runs through everything.
Yeah.
That's kind of what this dude did. This super detailed world.
Yeah, he 3D printed and painted everything.
Which, for one, I've bought a miniature. I've had a miniature for 2 months that I'm still scared to try to paint because I'm just I'm afraid it's going to look like a big black booger by the time I get done with it. Because I'm so nervous to attempt to paint it because I'm not art. High school was very clear to me that I'm not art.
I like that you refer to it as I'm not art.
Literally,
that's a very artistic thing to say, though.
You say that, but keep in mind, I didn't come up with that. And quick story, history flashback. We'll say the year's 2007. I'm in Miss Parks' art class. There's a lot of us guys in there, basketball players and such, and we're told to draw a ribbon and show the ribbon turn and show the shadow on the side of the ribbon because when a ribbon does this. And my ineptitude at art first showed its nasty little face there when I could not visualize how in the world I was supposed to make a shadow and make this ribbon look like it turns. Just let me draw you 2 lines and I'll just tell you that's a ribbon, that's art. We're supposed to make part. I work my tail off trying to make a little piece of pottery, like a teapot. And then what comes out is a miniature fat pink Aladdin's lamp that looked like it was his special brother. And then my dear friend Brady Batson wrote on it, not art. We were told to make mask. I panicked because I didn't like to make decisions. I ended up making a Iron Fist mask.
Which is only half a mask.
Which is half a mask, and it's yellow with white and black eyes. Literally, that was my art. I think I might have got a B in that class, maybe, out of pity. And then guess what's on the back of that mask to this day? Carved, not art, with a scalpel, or art thingy. So that's a good example. Yeah, not art. Not art.
Well, I was in an art class. Remember, we took Art 1 together.
We did. You scored Charlotte.
Yeah, you barrel rolled onto the table.
A sweet ninja roll on top of that table.
That was when...
I think I got detention for that, didn't I?
Or she yelled at you. It was one of the two.
I think she yelled at me. She did give me detention. I got in trouble at home.
By the way, welcome to the Nerdom of God podcast. I hope you are having a great day. And, yeah, it's not here. And so we're having a good night. I don't know where I'm going with this. And so, Joey, please...
Yeah, me neither. Let me just say to you, hello, everyone. Welcome to J&J Radio in the evening. We're super excited that you decided to join us today. We're going to fill your evening and your earballs with some wonderful, lovely conversation about the Nerdom of God. So now John is cackling because I just went into. I think the word earballs kind of. He wasn't prepared for it. His earballs wasn't ready for the.
I just feel like you need to have like a high turtleneck on with a scarf already wrapped around.
The people don't know that I don't already have that, and really thick glasses and a pipe.
Basically, I want you to look like what's the person off Despicable Me? Steve Carell's character.
Gru.
Yeah. I feel like you look like Gru. Like that's with that going on. Anyways, so as you can tell, we're talking about D&D and role-playing games.
Dungeons and Dragons!
And we're just going to be shooting the crap. And so if
that's what this one is. Joey's letting his hair down.
Yeah.
Figuratively.
It literally is hanging down from his face.
Literally. Yeah, Dungeons and Dragons.
Which, if you are not a true nerd, the name Dungeons and Dragons automatically... let me give you a visual representation and paint you a word picture at the same time. Imagine someone's glasses being down at the edge of their nose, and then someone taking them, and they're broken glasses with tape in the middle, and someone go, "Hey guys, you want to come over and have a slumber party?" as he shoves his glasses back up on his nose. That's what you think of when you think of Dungeons and Dragons. Almost guaranteed, if you're not induced and inducted into nerd culture. But the crazy thing is, and Joey and I kind of discussed this before, is just how popular it's gotten lately. And so if you don't know, like, it's booming. Like, it's literally booming. I mean, you've got famous Vin Diesel plays D&D, for Pete's sake. And I'm sorry, anything that's on the Fast and Furious movies, especially the later ones, is totally... What we play in Dungeons & Dragons is totally more believable than anything that has been on the last 3 Fast and Furious movies.
Yeah, and that's extremely fair, so I hope people won't argue that. And something that's interesting is, or that I find interesting, maybe other people don't, is the fact that, like George R.R. Martin played Dungeons and Dragons. He wrote Game of Thrones. Jon Favreau, the director of Iron Man, played Dungeons and Dragons. Patton Oswalt, very popular comedian, been on Parks and Rec, played Dungeons and Dragons. Mike Myers, Shrek, Austin Powers, played Dungeons and Dragons. Tim Duncan, the Spurs basketball player. Stephen Colbert, Robin Williams. These people, all very popular actors, comedians, entertainment, like moguls. Like these dudes, even sports people, writers, like they played Dungeons and Dragons, and like it's funny because like talking. And this podcast will be pretty loose. And to give a quick like backstory of my experience with Dungeons and Dragons, it started in high school in the little town of Newark, Arkansas, in like probably 2006 and 2007. And what I found, what was so funny was, like, I didn't have a context for Dungeons and Dragons, but like whenever I began playing it, what I noticed was literally there'd be 5 or 6 of us, and it was all basketball players. Like, so in our school in particular, we were a basketball school, and the basketball team were like what just unfortunately would be called the popular kids. And what I noticed was the popular kids played Dungeons and Dragons. Now, don't get me wrong, we didn't do Magic because we knew it'd be hard and stuff, so we always played like just warriors and barbarians, and I always played a monk represent. And like what I found though was the fact that like we called it cricket. So where cricket came from, no idea, but we called Dungeons and Dragons cricket so we could talk about it at school. So we'd go to high school and we'd talk about the game of cricket that we played last night and the things that happened, and no one knew what we were talking about, and so we kept it like incognito for like a year or two, and then we kind of realized that we cared much less about what people thought, and we started talking about it more freely, and then we let other people start playing more. And that's kind of when John started playing with a mutual friend of ours, Michael Bruce.
And so let me ask you a question. We'll just get the conversation rolling this way because I want to just be the conversation. What do you think is the reason why people play Dungeons and Dragons? Like, what draws you to it the most? Like what I can say about Dungeons and Dragons, and
I don't think it's an easy answer, but what Dungeons and Dragons allows is a couple of things, and it's something that like we're gonna bring it down now a little bit here on J&J Radio. What I find interesting about Dungeons and Dragons, prepare your earballs. Joey's about to drop some truth bombs. What I find about Dungeons and Dragons to be so like engaging is the fact that, for one, it's a face-to-face game. There's not a board. It's not something you can easily be on your phone during. It's something that is a communal, just engagement, I guess is a good way to put it. So like when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, you're sitting around a table or around a living room or something, and you're taking a part, like a shared experience with people, and so there's something kind of awesome about that face-to-face awesome experience. And then on top of that, if you're an introvert, it gives you an outlet to be an extrovert because you get to be someone else. Mm-hmm. If you're an extrovert, it gives you an outlet to be as quiet, reserved, and respectable as you wish you were. On top of that, it just brings people together. I mean, there's camaraderie, there's belonging. I mean, there's people that, like John introduced me to, that I've never met and would not know outside of the context of D&D, but now they're people that I genuinely value and genuinely want to spend time with, and that's something that like not a lot of things can do. You know, like we call this the Nerdom of God podcast, and we want to keep the Nerdom of God in there because we're both professing Christians and we both find ourselves just like in need of God's mercies and our identities in Jesus every day. But something that like I find super enthralling in this thing is like the fact that in college, I remember being a part of a church group that, like, we had all these people from different races, backgrounds, ages, interests, and everything. The one thing that united us was what we would call the gospel, the good news of Jesus. And in and through that, what D&D is a pale mirror of, but a good example of, and it's a shadow of, is that same sense of camaraderie and belonging and shared experience that the gospel can really bring to people's lives. Because why else would I spend time with these people except the fact that, hey, their half-orc sorcerer really needs my monk's help in a firefight type thing. That whenever they come together, they're such a shy person, but whenever it comes time that, we start rolling dice, that they literally might be able to let their hair down and be somebody that they wish that they were. So you can really develop like character, like personal character, while playing D&D, and not to get like super deep or super intellectual or philosophical with this game, but like this was a formidable game that I played like growing up, and then spent so many years away from it, and then it started having a resurgence, and then my dear cousin John here like started mentioning it to me again, and now like a year later, here we are actively talking about it all the time. There's 8 people in our group that I would say, other than you and Sean, I didn't really talk to any of them actively. Now we're always talking about Dungeons and Dragons, the dice that we just bought, the character stuff that we're thinking about, the things we just experienced, how much we're looking forward to the next game. Yep. It's just a uniting experience. It's exciting.
Yeah, and what's really crazy though, especially about, and I think what you said was really cool when. I was thinking exactly the same thing when you were talking about how it's a uniting experience. It really is a reflection of the gospel in the fact of coming together and talking about something greater than yourself, and that be the uniting factor. And what's really crazy is it does allow everyone to show it. And it's, you said something that everyone can come together and basically everyone takes something seriously and unites everyone. What's really crazy about Dungeons and Dragons, it's such a versatile game to where it can be as stupid or it can be as deep as you want it to be.
Oh, yeah.
It can be, you could be like Chris Hardwick and have something like Will Wheaton be the name of the character.
Yeah, a super meta,
yeah. Or
acknowledgement.
Or it could be something that you literally have put, 15 hours into crafting and, tweaking and everything else. And
you can play it, and what's interesting is even playing the game, and if you're not familiar at all with Dungeons and Dragons, John will probably be able to better explain it because he's our dungeon master. But
I am the dungeon master.
I can scientific data, as I push my glasses up. But yeah, no, you are. It's a role playing game. It's an imagination game. You use dice of different sizes to kind of determine the outcome of certain decisions and actions made. And it's an interesting game, but what's so funny is you can play it super loose and fun and light, but you can also take it very seriously and develop, and you can challenge the dungeon master with how you want to play the game, and it can be very challenging to then the other players. And so literally we're playing a month ago, and a character who's supposed to be a dog at the time literally shouts out something and goes, I mean, wolf. And we just die laughing because it's so funny and out of but then there's also a moment where my character is trying to reach out to these orphans to try to essentially rescue them, and you can just feel in the room there's a sense of like, just as we would noticing someone in need of our help, someone helpless in need of our help in the real world, we all sort of took that same tone of the room. The room had that sense of somberness. I mean, there's other players in the game that were like immediately like, whatever it takes for my character to sacrifice to then have an impact in the situation, that's what I'm going to pursue right now. And that was just like this very weird moment. And thus far in the game of us 8, like, that's been the game we've enjoyed the most, because it was this weird moment of just interconnectivity between all of our hearts in a way. Like, we all just sort of joined together for the first time. We felt like that sense of camaraderie that this game can foster, and that was awesome.
Yeah, and what's really crazy about that game, and I told you all that before, was that I consider that probably my worst DM game. In the fact of not setting up things like because the players were so, it just carried the whole thing. And I think that shows a life lesson. Sometimes you can put all the effort into it and just go crap,
Yep.
really fast. And sometimes you go through it with a hope and a prayer, and it turns out to be the best thing you've ever done. And so yeah. And some of you are like, I still don't understand what the heck you are talking about, and that's okay, because most people, like, it's really hard to understand until you see.
Did you get the story?
No, I started afterwards.
Dang it! I kind of want to share it.
You share the story.
Is it too long? I've already talked a lot.
No, share the story. It's okay.
I'll try to say it really quick. Okay, so guys, Dungeons and Dragons. I'm going to give you a quick recap into like how the game can be played. The last game that we're talking about, how we felt so kind of just enthralled in the game. I was talking about Dungeons and Dragons, which is sort of the theme of this podcast, is the fact that, like, there was a time when this especially was played in basements and back rooms and wasn't really comfortable to be talked about. But over the last decade...
Well, during the 80s, they thought it was demon worship.
Like, yeah, during the 80s, like, ooh, Dungeons and Dragons, and there was, like, an actual sense of, like, satanic... And it's like, no, like, it's just a fun role-playing game.
Well, and that was the reason why... One of the reasons why that we called it cricket a little bit was because...
there was no connotation.
Yeah, conservative Christians, some more conservative, we were afraid that they were thinking we were worshiping the devil, or performing voodoo.
Stuff
in the
We only killed like one chicken the whole time.
It was in your house, Miss Courtney. We're sorry.
We're so sorry. Not really. Okay, so but I'm trying to explain the game, and this guy, a coworker, he's just like, wait, what? Like, I don't, like, he could not wrap his head around it. And I'm like, okay, well, like, give you an example. So, like, we're playing the other night, and my character goes to the airship port, and I give some money to a guy who gave us safe passage. And when I come out, I noticed there were some orphans that followed me and my companion, and I see them, and I'm like, I try to make my way to them, and they sort of back away from me, and they're nervous, and you can tell. So I immediately just kneel down and squat down. I try to get on their level, and I try to, like, just show that I'm not a threat. And then the guy I'm talking to immediately is just like, wait, like, how does this happen? So this is happening on the table? I'm like, no, this is, like, happening in our imagination. And he's sitting there scratching his head, and I'm like, so then I throw some coins to them, and they come a little closer, and I'm like, hey, kids, it's okay, it's okay. And then they look over their shoulder, and there's some guys back there, and those guys are, like, looking menacingly. They have knives, sort of like their hands on the ready, and the kids, you can tell, are nervous. And I noticed this, and then I tell the kids, hey, it's okay, and I throw them some food, and I have one of my daily rations, and they come a little closer, and they start eating the food because they're clearly hungry. And then the coworker's just like, wait, well, now hang on. So, like, how do you know there's a guy over there? Well, the DM sets it up. Well, what's the DM? Well, the Dungeon Master. He's called the Dungeon Master? Yeah, like, well, that's just the Game Master, whatever, it's the same thing. Okay, well, so what do you do then? Well, like, the kids come a little... How do you know? Well, he's telling me that they come closer. Well, how do you know there's guys back there? Well, the Dungeon Master tells me, like you notice they look over their shoulder because they're, like, a little nervous, and you see two guys keeping an eye on them. They're not looking the way the crowd's looking. They're looking right at these kids. And then I'm like, okay, so then I flip some coins, and then he's like, well, now how are you doing this? Well, then I actually had to make some sort of roll, so I rolled the dice to, like, see if it played out. And I rolled high enough that it worked. And then he was like, what does the dice matter? When does dice come in this game? Is it a dice? Is this Yahtzee? No, it's not Yahtzee. It's imagination role-playing game. And it was just so comical to try to explain what it is. And it's one of those things you literally almost have to watch or just take part in. Because as soon as 5 minutes into the game, I think anybody who's actually paying attention will immediately go, okay, I got it. I know exactly what's happening now. But when you try to tell someone... Because
it sounds like you're getting crazy.
It sounds like you're crazy, and you feel crazy trying to explain it to somebody.
You think that's bad? I talked to a bunch of teenagers that are already judgmental as all get out, though, and trying to explain it. Like I mentioned, I'm really excited. Miss Franks, what's your big plans this weekend? I'm going to play Dungeons & Dragons. And automatically, the tone shifts at that point. Like, there's a plot twist. There's a kink in the plot, and they're like... And my nerdy kids are like, yeah, like, I'm getting, like, fist bumps. Like, you could just tell. And then my athletes are like, what is Dungeons and Dragons? And so I try to explain it, and I just go deeper and deeper into the hole. And they're like, so like, give us an example. What might happen? So I'll give an example of what's happened before. Like, for instance, one of the ones I usually give is Zach. When we were playing with Bruce, and we both made the saving throw to jump onto the drawbridge that was coming up and climb over, and Zach rolled like a 1. And then so Bruce is like, what are you going to do? And he's like, I'm going to try to fight my way up the stairs and dive off into the moat. And he'd been rolling crap the entire night. All of a sudden, his dice become possessed, and he literally rolls 16, 17, 18, 20, all the way up he's like, he's going up the stairs, he's killing people, and then he goes to dive off into the moat. And what does Zach roll to dive off the moat? A 1. A natural 1. And my kids are nerdy or start to hit. They think it's one of the funniest things they've ever heard. And my other kids are like,
yeah, just
what?
Like, what?
And so, yeah, it's really hard to explain it without feeling like you're crazy.
Yeah, kind of so, but it's such a...
Critical Role is probably the best thing to point to. It's one of the best examples I've ever seen.
Yeah, Critical Role on YouTube, on the Geek and Sundry page, is a very good place to point, and it's where I actually took this guy and said, look, a coworker, another 2 guys were there, and I was like, hey, Aaron, quickly pull up YouTube, go to Critical Role, random episode, random time in the thing, and immediately, a couple minutes into watching it, he's like, oh, okay, like he starts immediately, like, that's what you're talking about. I'm like, yeah, so, and that's what's so fun about it, is that, like, because it feels sort of like an inclusive thing, like you're like, or an exclusive thing, I guess I should say, where it's like, haha, this is our little thing, you stay away. But literally, what's interesting about most D&D circles are they want people to play, they want people to be engaged, be interested, be on board, have an interest in the game and in developing a character and playing a storyline. Like, that's what's so fun about it. And I think part of the resurgence is the fact that, like, and this may be way off base because obviously there's no data, and I'm a data guy, so it's like kind of stupid to say this, but in today's world, we see so much criticism online. We see so many, like, I call them telephone tough guys, people who on the phone would be really rude and mean, but like talking to them, they'd be as nice as can be, or they'd just be awkward because they don't know how to communicate to someone. D&D just fosters like a community of, like, you can, like, learn just social cues. You can learn how to better be friends with people. You can better develop friendships. And then, like, on top of that, like, something that, like, D&D affords is, in a world where people are so just, like, afraid to talk to one another and afraid to really, like, be themselves, you can come together and play D&D, and it frees you up because you get to play someone else. And so then that lets you then just enjoy yourself. It removes all of your masks and your fears, and you get to just enjoy the moment with other people.
Yeah, and also I think it allows for altruism in a world that doesn't allow for altruism anymore. The idea that, you know, because in D&D, what you do is when you do your character, in case you don't, you pick an alignment. The alignments are chaotic good, neutral good, lawful good, chaotic neutral, true neutral, lawful neutral, chaotic bad or chaotic evil, neutral evil, or lawful evil. And that kind of determines what your actions are, what kind of guides you. And so if chaotic good's wonderful to play because you don't have to obey the laws to obey good. We all see people get off all the time with light prison sentences or get off on a technicality, and like we're mad because the law has failed. And you know, that's one of the reasons why we're drawn to superheroes is vigilantes, is the idea that, you know, guess what, good wins out in the fact when someone's going to take care of it. or lawful good. The idea that we see corrupt politicians and corrupt lawmakers, and you can play a character that sticks to the letter of the law and wants to do good. And I think the altruism really allows, and also allows for true evil, and we don't see true evil in the world. Even things like ISIS, to an extent, can be rationalized to the point of, oh, well, it's it's a radicalized form of religion. It's a form of basically mind control and coercion. It can be rationalized to a point. And guess what? If the DM says that dragon is pure evil and wants to destroy the world in fire and brimstone, guess what that dragon wants to do? There is no further motivation. It wants to destroy the world with fire and brimstone, and you need to stop it. And that altruism is really, really good, to where everything is 100% black and 100% white, 100% good or 100% evil. And I think that's a really, really cool thing about D&D, is it allows for that type of escapism, to where there is an altruistic world. Or it could be the other way, to where everything's messy and messed up, and you get to play someone that's involved into the thick of it, and you live your life as a computer programmer or working in an office job that doesn't do anything. That allows for that too. It allows for the other side of it, for things to be more gray than what they are in the world, and not just wake up, brush your teeth, shower, or poop, shower, eat breakfast, go to work, come back home, go to bed. Like, it allows for something besides that, and I think that's kind of cool.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's something that's like, to add on to that is so cool about the Dungeons and Dragons, and there's a lot of other things, but like the thing about Dungeons and Dragons, it's like any other communal experience. Like, me and a friend were recently talking, like, our church is like a very missional minded church. We break into groups that are like intentionally pursuing people, or a people group, or geographical region or whatever, and we were talking about how good CrossFit is. Like, as much crap as CrossFit gets, if you think about it, the people who are involved are super loyal, super charismatic. They're super, like, all about CrossFit. And we were talking about how, like, they have a good model, because, like, literally they get together, they share meals, they encourage one another, they take part in each other's successes and failures. And it was like, well, that's a great thing about D&D. Like, there's a TED Talk, and it's worth looking up. It's by Ethan Gilsdorf, on why Dungeons and Dragons is good for you. And he talked about losing his mom at a young age from a brain aneurysm, and he talked about, he played Dungeons and Dragons, and he's listing all the reasons why Dungeons and Dragons are good for you, and how, you build community, you gain social skills, you get to just escape for a little bit. But then he also said, and you learn a little bit how to better deal with a mom who's not there anymore, because there's a community now. There's somewhere where you have an outlet, you have a release, and that was such an interesting moment to just realize that what I think I love so much about Dungeons and Dragons is just the fact that it allows an opportunity to be who you wish you were, or affirm what you think you are, or encourage others to be all that they can be in a world that to you is completely real.
Yeah. Or go the opposite direction and be something that you would never do. Be the rude, evil dude who just wants to watch the world burn.
Or be the Josh Allens who just wishes that stupid secretary would fall for his sexual advances.
By the way, it's been my greatest joy as a DM to play that out.
Yeah, thank God he's rolled so bad so often.
Yes, and then Kevin rolled so well, and I still had the...
Oh, true.
In case you don't know...
She's not having it. Sorry, yeah, we have our group...
Yeah, it's interesting. You know who the influence for that secretary is, right? It's the secretary to the mayor off of Powerpuff Girls, where you never see her face. You just said she has blonde hair, and
I did not.
Yeah, that's what I had in mind.
Okay,
just to be funny. I just don't know, and I think that what we're seeing with D&D is it's the next evolution of nerd culture coming out. Because let's face it, like the first. When nerd culture became popular was with comic books being cool.
Yeah, because they started making successful movies.
Yeah.
Based on comic book characters.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden, boom.
Yeah, and and when that starts happening, you unlock a lot of other things, and you've got people now that are so open about fandom, and the internet's helped by that, because even if you live in Podunk, Arkansas. If you have internet access, you can find community with people who completely accept you, in a community that's thousands, if not millions, of people.
Yeah.
Perfect example is bronies, My Little Pony fans. Like literally, what you think would be so as much of a child. I know adults who are bronies, and they come from places that don't accept the brony lifestyle, but they have places that can
Interesting.
because of the internet. And so I think that's an interesting thing about how that type of stuff plays out. Is that now besides nerd culture becoming more and more prevalent because of movies and other things like that, but also the internet provides community and allows. And community is that's one of the reasons why we're commanded. If you're a Christian, commanded together with other Christians, is because when you do that, it basically invigorates you to go out and bring more people in, because that community is somewhere to belong. And I think that's the way with that's just the way God set us up when the idea of community is that you need those things to help, to make sure you're accepted and invigorated and reaffirm those beliefs that you have, regardless of whether it's a belief about the Messiah and who Jesus is and who he is in connection with God and who he is in connection with man, or if it's something as stupid as whether or not you think Spider-Man could beat the crap out of Daredevil in a fight.
He couldn't.
You can find community anywhere.
Anywhere. And it's a horrible example, but I totally understand what you're talking about. I think I'm super thankful that I've kind of been lured back into the D&D world, and I'm super thankful that now I'm in this kind of mini community that we've formed over the last 6 months that has now developed into like a full-on. We've developed a rhythm of Dungeons and Dragons. We've I've been trying to come up with my own stories to DM to give you an opportunity to play and to give others an opportunity to play. Sorry, that was just when the area kicked off.
That's why it's
or there's a ghost. Or there's a person in there. Sorry, a door clicked, and so John's about to find out all the people I have stashed in the closet. D&D's been a super fun thing to be involved with again, and I hope that we can look. What's interesting about our local community in Northeast Arkansas is just the fact that there's a store now in Northeast Arkansas, in this town of Jonesboro, that totally supports Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons, HeroScape, Pathfinder, all these other games that are being played all the time on top of just video games and everything. Like, it's supporting that. Like, you have like patrons that are supporting that. The fact that exists in the small town Arkansas is a testament to itself of the resurgence of this nerdom. Yep.
And that's Colson's, by the way, if you're wondering where that is, over by the bowling alley in Jonesboro.
Colson's, yeah.
Yeah. And I love the fact, because it tests every range of emotion, in case you don't know. It truly lets you see the best and the worst in people. Whether it be arguing about a rule, or whether or not someone's too powerful, or a character's too weak, or whether they thought it was unfair because you think the DM's picking on you, or the DM's mad because people didn't prepare the way they were supposed to. It literally shows every range of emotion, and I think that's a cool thing, because you literally can see something different about people. And I think we've gone over that a whole lot, and I hope we're not just treading the same water each time. Guys, if you get a chance, and this is probably one of the final things we're going to say, get out, find something you like, find something you love. That's what being a nerd is all about. You don't have to be a nerd about nerd stuff. You can be a nerd about cars. You can be a nerd about sports, about history, about just find something you love, dive into it, and if you're a follower of Christ, let it give all glory to God. Let it be something that you can connect to the truth of God through. If you're not, I'm not going to have a theological debate with you over a podcast, because it'd be pretty one-sided. We can have a conversation later. But find something that makes you feel community and makes you feel acceptance, because that's one thing I think all humans are striving for, regardless of what their spiritual nature is at this point. So find something you like, and also don't close out something you think is too nerdy for you, or something that's outside your wheelhouse, because D&D can definitely be that way for some people. And also board game culture and everything else that's been a resurgence. Watch Tabletop with Will Wheaton. Watching Will Wheaton roll dice has a karmic effect. You really feel like there's probably someone on the other side of the world that is rolling straight natural 20s, because Will Wheaton cannot roll dice for crap. He is cursed. It is horrible.
He's cursed, and I think my cousin, your brother Zach, is probably close to walking in his footsteps. But
yeah,
there's something that, this is probably the last thing I have to say, is Kevin Smith, a nerd of nerds, huge comic book fan.
Nerd royalty, to be honest.
Nerd royalty, to be honest. He's worked on Daredevil comic book. He worked on the Daredevil movie. He's directed episodes of Flash. He owns a comic book store. He did Clerks and Clerks 2. and a lot of fun things. Dude's a legit dude, legit nerd, and he makes his own stuff because he loves movies and he loves TV shows and he loves comics and nerd stuff. But he made a comment, and his comment was in a response to a troll on the internet. But something that he ends it with is, don't make yourself mad. Make something original and fun. Because if you're not being useful in this world, you're being useless. Don't be useful. Don't be useless. Go make stuff that makes people happy. And, I read that today, and I was just kind of like, that's something that's just super encouraging, because it really makes you think, and it's a good reminder of what John's saying right now, is just the fact that, like, you can be nerdy about anything. We call this the nerdom of God. And so, like, we're clearly coming into it with, like, a duality, but you can genuinely, you can be nerdy, you can geek out, you can be excited and passionate about tons of different things. And what I think this podcast is mainly there for is just to celebrate what we're passionate about and to just enjoy it, and to not, people can have their own opinions and comments and whatever, but like, that's fine. Like you're entitled to it. But like, if you want to show some passion about something, if you're into something, like, go all out, make something worth watching, make something worth enjoying, be a part of something worth living. I guess with that, Papa Joe's going to sign off.
Papa Joe.
Papa Joe! Sorry.
Good Lord, there's so much red on that screen where the audio is coming through.
You can go and edit most of that out. Pretty much any red you see is me. FYI, on the podcast, and he's probably going to cut this, but in the podcast, there's essentially a blue and red. Red's like when you get loud and intense. I really don't know how audio works, but blue's kind of more of a neutral home place to be. And pretty much on the screen, if it's red, it's Joey, and if it's blue, it's John. And it kind of is a little, it's kind of comical to watch the dynamic of our voices, but that's what's beautiful, because we're family, we're friends, we're brothers, and we're I don't know, super stoked to be here. I'm done. Stop. Turn this off. We got to figure out a way to end these podcasts.